Hey, glad to see you. Thanks for joining me. My name is Jerrel. I am an Earth-based humanoid organic entity. I have no cybernetic enhancements, and I have not yet been infected by the AI virus, knock on wood. Today we will analyze and discuss Dragon Quest VII Reimagined. This will be running on the Switch 2. This is the third episode in this series. In the middle of this episode, I will share a bit of the work that I'm doing with my games right now. I'm very busy wrapping up development on The Hero of Destiny Was Killed by the Final Boss. Development is done, and I am preparing to submit that to Nintendo and Steam. So I'm just preparing the submission process and finalizing just a bit of polish today. So I'll have to just focus on one episode for today. I know people would like me to cover more games. I'm taking more requests for discussing games, so I will try to do that when I have a bit more leisure time. At the moment, I'm very busy with my own development. Let's take a look at Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, and I will be sharing my perspective on this as a game developer. This is my dog Logan. I name my dogs after X-Men. One day if I get a cool dog that has different eye colors, or maybe a dog that's had an injury and only has one eye, I will name him Cyclops. One day when I get a female dog, I'm going to name her either Rogue or Storm. So my doggy will be hanging out here with me today in the studio while we record. Okay, let's enjoy some Dragon Quest VII Reimagined. Logan. Logan, you're a dog. Logan, you're a little doggy. Something I want to point out here that I think is very interesting, that is noticeably different from the other Dragon Quest entries, especially with Dragon Quest XI, Echoes of an Elusive Age, that is different here is the color space. The color space, which is defined in this game, and Unity and Unreal can change their color spaces. I believe this is made in Unreal. They use color space maps, and that changes the way that colors are expressed, that can be expressed. They define the maximum range for each red, blue, green pixel color, and the color values. They allow games to look more photographic, more realistic, more stylized. There's something about the color space with this that makes it look like the light is more natural. And when I say natural, I mean it feels closer to natural sunlight color, and it feels like that natural sunlight color is influencing the environment here. There is a coldness to the light that is very natural and organic in a way that I have not seen in other Dragon Quest entries, and especially other games that tend to go for an anime style match. So say for example, have a look at the top of the screen there. There's a lightness to it. I'm interested in taking a closer look at that and trying to understand what method they use to implement that lightness of the color up top. It almost looks like volumetric lighting. And it makes it feel like there's this natural, neutral color tone for the sunlight coming through. That's so interesting to me. What's interesting here as well, let's take a look at this building as it gets close to the camera. This is different from the ship mast that we saw in the starting town. Now, as the ship mast, as the geometry gets close to the camera, it uses some sort of pixel-based technique that causes those parts of the geometry to become invisible so that they don't obscure the view. But the building here does not have that process, which means that is part of the shader. So the shader that is used for this building is different from the shader that is being used from the ship. And a shader is part of the program that just tells the game engine how a geometry in the game environment is meant to be rendered. The shader for that fountain, water for example, is a different shader from what is used for the characters. They would have a different shader that is used for the buildings. And that's because shaders are all purpose-built. They all achieve something specific, but performing any kind of calculation, any kind of rendering has a rendering cost. They cause the frame rate to get lower and lower if you go over budget with your rendering cost. And so we have shaders that are purpose-built, and generally they will do precisely what we need them to do and nothing more. For example, the silhouette effect we have on the character, we don't have that apply to anything else because that has a rendering cost. There's calculations that occur. See the other characters like the giant dog. does not have a silhouette. The other characters in this world, they don't have the silhouette. Not only does it make sense because the silhouette is there for the player to understand where their character is, but also that would incur a rendering cost as well. So there's just a brief explanation on the use and optimization of the shaders there. So I'm very sorry here. I just have to address this really quick. They were bothering me. I was trying to not look at them. So this is so interesting. Let me figure out where I need to go next. Now I find the visual aesthetic here, this is quite unique. This is unlike anything that we've seen in other games. This game sets out to do something very differently. It has a very specific design philosophy in all aspects, and the most accurate term that I can come up with to describe this aesthetic is neoclassical. This is a natural and organic evolution of the art style that became prominent in the early to mid 90s when it came to video games, especially RPGs and Dragon Quest. We see other art styles, other aesthetics that tend to focus a bit more on style matching anime and becoming stylized more in that way, but the proportions of the characters in this world, the framing and positioning of the camera, the perspective which we view the environments, especially here, when we take a look, there's an abstract concept to the size of the world in relation to the characters. This is very much a natural evolution of the design philosophies of the early to mid 90s. And this is using the latest visual imaging techniques, composition, technical implementation techniques. The most accurate term I can think of to describe this is neoclassical. So there is a technical flaw here, and I believe that the developers really don't have much say over this, and I will see if I can zoom in the camera again. There is a technical flaw that has to do with the cascading of shadow resolution. The closer we get to where shadows are meant to be rendered, the closer they are to the viewing camera, the higher resolution they are. Shadows typically have a very high rendering cost. The farther we get from those positional values, then the lower resolution. So let's have a look at these flowers here. You can see the shadows under the flowers, and this foliage here is quite detailed, but as we get farther from it, you see there's a harsh cutoff where we suddenly no longer see the shadows underneath that because the resolution of the shadow has been decreased, and it's a bit jarring. Now, I say this isn't really the fault of the developers, but what they can do is manually increase the range for the high resolution shadows to be rendered. I would extend that at least another 15-20 feet were I to identify this visual anomaly in one of my own projects. Then I would address that. Really what I would like to see, again, as I mentioned before, is I would like to see the game engines, this is built in Unreal, I believe. I would like to see better transitions, better cascading between the low resolution, high resolution shadows. This is something to me that's quite noticeable. Is it a little bit distracting? It doesn't really negatively affect the overall experience. If they didn't adjust this, it wouldn't really be a big deal, but I'm addressing this as a game developer, and it's important to identify things like this that can potentially take people out of the experience, that can disrupt the immersion that people are experiencing here. So that's just something I noticed. I didn't really notice it that much when the camera was zoomed out, but in the options here you can adjust the camera. So let's go ahead and adjust the camera distance so it's farther, and it's, oh, I see it. It's certain parts of the game where it's a bit noticeable. I actually really like the camera being closer, so I'm going to zoom back on in. I like seeing the wonderfully expressive characters. I want to take a look more at Kiefer. The shader that they've set up for his clothing is so fascinating. It looks like you can see the woolly fibers on his red tunic. It's so interesting. Let me find where I should progress. There is something interesting also that I want to point out, that the characters self-shadow cast, and I wonder if that is only for the player character or if the NPCs also self-shadow cast. That is something that can have performance implications if so many characters on screen are casting shadows willy-nilly left and right. I'm not seeing it as prominently on the other characters. This is interesting. So I would suspect that perhaps the NPCs do not self-shadow cast. For example, you can see the hat. Let's take a look at the hat of our character here. The hat is casting a shadow on his own geometry. That is self-shadow casting. But it's possible. I believe, no, they are self-shadow casting. See the man, his arms are self-shadow casting. Now this is a performance consideration. About 10 years ago, it was still common to find visuals in games where NPCs did not self-shadow cast. They were manually set to not self-shadow cast for performance considerations because they caused the frame rate to drop. The first game I noticed self-shadow casting was Silent Hill 3 on the PlayStation 2, and it was quite noticeable because I had not seen other games self-shadow casting. For example, games from that era, if we take a look at Onimusha 3, which is rendered fully in a 3D space, that game did not have self-shadow casting. Let me go ahead and find where I meant to go next. There's something I've noticed here that takes extremely precise and careful planning. The player is able to manipulate the camera a limited range in terms of upward and downward angle here. And when you offer freedom like this, at least to any degree, you run the risk of the camera clipping into these environments. I have noticed that the camera does have a degree of collision checking so that the camera does not clip into the terrain. For example, in the first town, the camera will not clip into the terrain. But this is framed in such a way to where the camera does not clip into any of the houses. So the developers have taken careful consideration and planning when it comes to setting a maximum height for the buildings here, for the architecture, the geometry. They know exactly where the camera is going to be, and they've considered that. So the camera never clips into anything. So as you explore it, it feels like you are exploring in an organic and natural way, and that there's less visual anomalies that will take you out of the experience. Now, I'm certain that there is collision checking for the camera, so even if the buildings did go high enough, the camera would move itself. It would shift upward or move to the side, as we have seen in the first town with the terrain. But when you have that, it can just be a little distracting when that happens. It feels video gamey, and having this flow like this, it's a very small thing, but it makes a big deal when it comes to a smooth and seamless experience. Have a look at this character here. This is detail that I've noticed on many characters consistently. Have a look at the cheeks, the nose, and the ears. They are hand-painted a little red, and it gives a sense of life and rosiness to their cheeks. It makes the characters feel alive. As humans, we have imperfections on our faces. You know, we're not all one flat tone color unless you're like a Chaozu. But this sort of hand-painted coloration just makes the characters feel more organic and feel more alive. It was something I started doing in my games with my human characters, so I started hand-painting discoloration and redness in certain parts of the faces. It gives us a sense that there's blood flow there. And while this is a stylized aesthetic for the character would just look flat and dead if he didn't have that. And while it wouldn't be a problem, because the abstract normality for this kind of visual aesthetic is we don't necessarily expect to see that kind of redness and discoloration. We don't expect it, so we don't find problems with it if it's not there. But having seen that, it just makes the characters feel more alive seeing that. I noticed that on many characters consistently, and it is free in terms of performance. It doesn't cost anything because all of that detail is hand painted in, so it's not processing lighting or anything like that. If we take a look at games like Digimon Story Time Stranger, all of the characters use some degree of subsurface scattering, so that light does actually pass through the characters to some degree. It's calculated in real time, and while there is a performance cost, that method also makes characters feel more alive. It makes it feel like they're reacting to the lighting in the world around them. I find that personally quite interesting. This is a fun little visual element. You see this mirror here. In the past, when it came to the first generation of 3D game consoles, you know, the Sega Saturn, PlayStation, N64, and even up to the PlayStation 2, we weren't really able to have real reflections. This is not a fake reflection, this is a real reflection. In the past, again, with those consoles, we actually would have to have another character model being rendered, and we would move that character model around. It takes a significant amount of programming and logistical work, and this is using something called a render target. There is another camera. We are viewing the game through a camera. There is another camera that's basically inside that mirror, and that it is looking at a view. It's looking at the player character, or it's looking at the room, really, anything that it sees, and it is capturing whatever it sees and it's rendering it to a texture. And so that is how we do reflections these days. It's very cheap, it's very easy logistically, it's very easy to do. It's fast and easy, and when it comes to problem solving, implementing solutions, you generally want elegant and efficient solutions. So that's making use of modern technology. That is the right way to use technology efficiently. There's something I really like here. You see how there are different levels to the height of the walls. This is excellent. The reason why they've done this is so that the walls don't block too much of the details on the inside of the environments here. The walls that are the outer walls are higher, they're taller, and so there's a clear separation. They let us know this separates this inner world from the outer world, and it gives it a very interesting degree of variety when it comes to visuals. So logistically, it's a brilliant solution to be able to show more of the environment. It blocks less of the environment. Brilliant. That is a brilliant solution. I honestly would not have thought of that. It looks like it makes sense diegetically, you know, it's in context. And the reason why it does is because they've used that diagonal, I'm not an architect, okay? I'm going to study architecture a little bit so I can have better good words. But that diagonal bar there, you see, that tells us that the world knows that it is like this. It knows that it exists that way. And so it makes it feel like it belongs that way. In context, brilliant, brilliant work. So logistically, it makes sense. Stylistically, it makes sense. And it adds visual variety to the height. It's breaking the line in terms of the visual elevation. Overall, there's less conformity. It looks interesting. Great job on this. Excellent, excellent. This doesn't just look nice, it exhibits an extremely strong, a master level understanding of visual communication and coming up with solutions that are interesting. Very well done. Would you like to pet the pretty kitty? Yes, I would like to pet the pretty kitty. Ooh, a delicious treasure chest for this old boy. What's inside? Oh, no! He bent down to open it and everything, and it was locked. What a bummer. Ah. Ooh, I appear to have found an underground environment. Now, this is interesting. There are some scenes where the rotational freedom is clamped between certain values. And this is pretty normal if we don't want the player viewing environments from particular angles. It's very, very simple to implement something like that. I first noticed that in Breath of Fire 3 on the PlayStation. That's the first time in the game's industry and in the history at all that I saw for myself a camera where the player had some freedom. You know, you press L and R and it sort of moves the camera around. And there were certain environments in Breath of Fire 3 where that rotational freedom was clamped. And so we see that here as well. It's interesting because this game, the original, would have launched pretty close to Breath of Fire 3 on the PlayStation as well. This is just, this dappled sunlight coming through the trees, so delightful. The music. I believe this is live performed music. I believe this is a reorchestration, a rearrangement. I can't imagine how complex and difficult it must be to balance all of that in wherever they recorded it. It must have been such a wonderful, fantastic process to be part of whatever orchestra, whatever symphony got to work on the soundtrack. Oh, it must have been an absolute delight. Now, I feel like this is a live performance because of the woodwinds that we can hear. There's a very organic and elegant swelling as the notes start softly and build up and they swell. It's a little hard to do when it comes to when you're synthesizing the music, when it's all running through sound fonts. It's possible, you can use electronic instruments. It's a much more elegant way to do it instead of using a keyboard. You can program it in, but it's a pain to do that. And what I hear in the music is it's so organic. It feels like a live performance, but I haven't just focused on the music. I'll give it a listen now. What I'm listening for is any sort of ornamentation and vibrato in the woodwinds. The music, the strings are very disciplined, especially when you're in a group. You don't want everyone doing, freehand vibrato, whatever they want, but very, very experienced and professional musicians would know that you would sync up your vibrato with the tempo of the music. And if you have a strong conductor, they would lead you into having synchronized vibrato. But even then, having a number of people doing vibrato that's all consistent is very difficult. So, it's a gradual process. Some people will start faster and stronger than others. Some people will, ritardando a little differently than others. You don't have to call me out on Twitter that ritardando is a musical term, all right? I'm not making fun of anybody. Oh no, retardo. Retardan. Oh no. I've psyched myself out into saying it wrong. Retardo. Retardan. Oh dear. Oh dear. I need more coffee. Hey, very quickly, I'll just share a little bit of the game that I'm finishing and preparing for submission. This is the hero of Destiny was killed by the final boss. In this game, at the beginning of the story, the hero is killed by the final boss, and so the only characters that are left are these 50 NPCs that live in the final village that's right next to the final dungeon. So you have to use these weak NPCs, all level 0. They have no combat abilities, no magic, no really useful skills. You have to build a party of 8 or less than 8 if you want, and you've got to find a way to slog through the dungeon. There's an exploration of some fun themes and ideas here. The story was really written, for people that have been enjoying games and RPGs, in that these characters are kind of saying, like, I don't even know what MP is, I don't have any magic, and they're saying, look, the hero was standing out in the field killing slimes all day, and then he amassed a bunch of green slimes, and now he's sold it, and now the item shop is full of green slime drop. I mean, what are we even supposed to do with that? And so these characters that have no combat abilities and no magic have to find a way to slog through the final dungeon. And it is just meant to give you creative freedom in how you approach the game. You can try and level up these characters if you want. You can do solo runs. Each individual character has a unique set of weapons and skills, and it's almost like a deck builder in that you build up your party and you use their abilities, which all have a cooldown meter, and you try to find a way to deal with these enemies these are end game enemies. They're absurdly strong, and you've just got to find a way to deal with it with these characters that are not heroes. Anyway, I think this is going to be very fun. I had so much fun working on this game, and I'm very proud of the work that I've done here, because I think it's going to be very fun for people. Alright, let's get back to Dragon Quest. Now, I don't have the Sizzling Stone. Where do I find the Sizzling Stone? I'm going to head back to my town now. I think I'm supposed to head back to my place, and maybe I'll have my friends there. Or I'll explore around, you know. I'm trying to remember. I did play 3 or 4 hours of this on the 3DS, so I remember a little bit. But I've been told that there are some adjustments. This is so delightful. When I first saw the trailers for this, the color space caught my eye. Because again, I've not seen any other game with this kind of color space, with this visual aesthetic, and neoclassical is the strongest term that I can think of when describing this. This is so pleasant to look at, and a lot of it does have to do with the art direction for color and the color space that they've defined here. I just want to applaud the developers on this. They've done a brilliant job. Okay, I think, there we go. I find my friend here. Something I've noticed about I noticed it on the King's Crown and now on Kiefer's red tunic. There is some degree of rim lighting on the clothing that makes it appear. It gives it an air and a sense of royalty. It makes it feel like it's glittering in the environment a little bit. Not glittering, but, you know, it's catching the light vibrantly. See, look at his clothing, his red tunic. It just catches light in a brilliant way. There is some degree of rim lighting too that I noticed it on the King's Crown as well. And I think that's a great visual distinction to show, oh, this is a royal character. They're wearing probably the more expensive clothes, you know, and he stands out from the other characters visually. It's visual storytelling, it's organic storytelling. Brilliant, brilliant. Now, in terms of character design, they make the character look interesting because the red that is expressed lower on his character is a darker shade, and you see his... Oh, I'm reading here. Sort of his stockings. They don't have that kind of glow to them. They don't have the rim lighting. If they did, it would actually be more distracting. When we design our characters, especially when we implement their graphical assets, we need to make sure that they don't look sloppy, especially when it comes to character design. Generally, you want to keep the focus of the viewer around here. Whatever visual elements you have on the character, you need to guide the focus towards the subject's face. This is something that Digimon Story Time Stranger is exceptional at. The framing is so powerfully competent. Not just competent, but it's master level when it comes to the posing and animation for Digimon Story Time Stranger. I do want to share more Digimon game experiences with you all. I do have plans to do more episodes for Digimon Story Time Stranger, but I'm very busy with my work at the moment. I think we'll go ahead and just skip this dialogue here. Okay. We'll have to bring that back to Pike. Something that we see with Kiefer's hair is hand-painted, baked-in ambient occlusion for the hair. You see there are certain areas of his hair where it is darker, where it looks like the hair is closer to his scalp, and in between his locks of hair, you see darkness. That is not processed in real time. You could do that, you know, there's a performance cost, but that is hand-painted in there, and it adds dimensionality and contrast to the character, makes them look interesting. If we have a look at many games that go for a generic, stereotypical anime style match, say for example, you know, the Rune Factory games. I recently picked up Rune Factory 5, and I'll be sharing that experience with you in some episodes. I want to explain my analysis on that game, but it's very generic looking, and that's not, I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm saying that there's nothing unique or interesting about the visual style of that. And say, for example, the graphical assets for Rune Factory don't necessarily have the attention to detail or care that we see even just from the way that Kiefer's tunic towards the top has more vibrant glow to it. There we go. See, a slightly duller for his stockings. We have the hand-painted ambient occlusion. this is so fantastic. Oh, wow. I just want to soak that in. So with the shader work that they've used on his clothes, they've really ramped up the harshness on the normal map, and it gives a sense of fuzziness to the tunic. This world feels so dense and deeply rich and lived in, and some of that does have to do with the attention that they've put towards the material. Material is not something that developers often pay that much attention to, and the reason why that happens is because modern game engines do all of the heavy lifting. And if game engines do all the work, the more technology does for you, the less that you will think about it. And the less that you think, then the less you will know, and the less that you will understand. So it's important to still think about these things, to consider how you can use modern technology rather than let modern technology do all the work for you. This is a situation where these developers have not let technology take control of their creative process. Oh man, Kiefer's more brilliant than you realize. This is so fantastic. The pleating on his, it's not a skirt. I'll say the bottom part of it. There's a technical term for it. The pleating on that, they have, they used a darker color for the internal part of the pleating because it helps break up the visual monotony. If they hadn't done that, then it would just be a flat red character. And a less competent artist would not have had that dark pleating. They would have used this exact same tone and material for the stockings. And what they've done here is just put a lot of attention to that to make sure the character is interesting. It's so important as well to consider what your character will look like from different angles. This is something that's so shocking to me when it comes to Digimon Story Time Stranger, and that somehow the Digimon all look fantastic, regardless what angle you're viewing them from. Is this man gonna complain if I just kind of don't say anything and just... Oh, come on. He's not even looking. He wouldn't know. He wouldn't miss what's in there. Give me your gold. Give me your boxer briefs. I want them. I want to wear your boxer briefs. I want to pretend I'm you. Die, Jerrel. Okay. This is so delightful. The music, the sound effect, everything just gels here. Everything's groovy, baby. Let's see where I go next. In the past, we would have been concerned about the cost for performance when it comes to all that physics simulation, but our modern GPUs are very adept at calculating physics simulation, so it's not a big deal to have to have the entire thing composed of each individual piece has its own geometry and collider for physics simulation. It's not a big deal these days. Plus, it does not last for that long. It only lasts for a short amount of time, so it's great to see that kind of work put in. That's all manual work that the developers have to put in. I think worth it. It's so satisfying. And it makes me feel good destroying them barrels. Now there's an interesting discussion we can have here about the music. Now in general, the most common time signature is 4/4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And what we hear in this music, there is actually a debate whether it makes sense to refer to some music as 2/4. Some people say, well, 2/4 is basically the same thing as 4/4. Why not just call it 4/4? This is an academic discussion, and people who aren't really into music won't care. It matters to me, though. I really enjoy music, and I really enjoy discussing it. And now let's go ahead and listen to the emphasis of this part here with the brass. 1, 1, 1, 1. Ba, ba, ba. So we have an emphasis. We have an emphasis on on the 1 and the 2. There's an emphasis, and then it feels like it's splitting the music in half like that, though. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. If music is in 4, in 4 beats of 4, generally there's an emphasis on the first, on the first beat of that. But we're getting a very strong emphasis on the 1s and the 2s. Oompa, 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 oompa. And would be fair to refer to this piece. This could be referred to as a piece in 2/4, as instead of 4/4, because of where the emphasis is placed. This is such a fun and interesting academic discussion, because there can be people who can argue the opposite, and it's interesting to discuss these kinds of things with each other. Look how powerful the inverse kinematic is. Look how hard the inverse kinematic is working to get that character's leg up on that step. Inverse kinematic is magic recipe. We've had it for a decade and a half or so, really commonly on everything, you know. And that allows the character's rig to be adjusted in response to the environment. And that is how we have feet and legs stand up on steps. These steps are so huge. So you can see the inverse kinematics is it's working real hard to get that leg up there. But it's one of my favorite ingredients that we've added to games. It just adds a feeling of organicness, that the characters do exist in this world because they're responding to those steps. It's something that I've been implementing in my more realistic, my 3D games, but and it's something that there are automated solutions for it. So it's not like you have to program that yourself, but you do have to implement that yourself, and you have to adjust your rigging and your characters to take that into account. I'll put a pin in the episode today. I hope you've enjoyed taking a look at this. The demo is available on Switch, Switch 2, PS5. Try it for yourself. This is extremely delightful. I'm really having a blast. I hope you've enjoyed hearing me discuss aspects about this game from a developer standpoint. If you would like an episode 4 to the series, please let me know. I have to be very careful with my time right now because my development is quite demanding when it comes to my games. Please be well, take care of yourselves, and let's enjoy some Dragon Quest.